How's it going, guys? Nick at Tooele Valley Motorsports. Just wanted to take a few seconds, and I finally got back to the dealership after the Kawasaki dealer convention down in Phoenix and talk about the new Kawasaki Ridge and some of my initial impressions of the new vehicle. Of course, I'm sitting here leaned against a 2024 Kawasaki KRX4 that we have in our showroom with a few modifications, but I wanted to make this video about the Kawasaki Ridge and some of my initial thoughts and feedback on that machine. So Kawasaki did something pretty cool, and it's not at every dealer show that they actually do this. Like Can-Am with the Maverick R launch, they didn't have a machine there for us to test drive, but Kawasaki did with the Ridge. They actually had a really cool test track set up for two different models, and they had two different test tracks. They had a test track set up for the limited 92 horsepower version. Now the limited being the gold machine that they showed a lot of. It had the Garmin display in it and the GPS and all of that. And then they also had another track that was a little more open, a little bit more room to run, a little bit faster track for the XR model of the Ridge. Now the XR model of the Ridge is going to be marketed more as the performance version of the Ridge. The first machine I drove, though, was the limited, the 92 horsepower version. And jumping into the machine, Kawasaki did do a really good job with the fit and finish of the machine. The dash layout's cool. It kind of has like a fake leather look to the plastic, and they changed the colors of the plastics depending on the model and the trim. And I think they did a good job with that. Now, on the limited model, it is going to be marketed a little more in the utility space and is going to be probably more competing with like your Ranger North Star and your Defender Limited. When I drove the 92 horsepower version of the Ridge, my initial impression was it is very much in that space as far as its performance, its overall feel. It runs good, and that inline 4 motor is so smooth, it's so symphonic, which is really kind of the thing that sets the Ridge apart in my view, is that engine. But it wasn't like crazy spirited, right? It ran more like what we're kind of accustomed to out of the utility segment side-by-sides. After I rode that machine, I jumped into the 116 horsepower version of the Ridge, the XR, and jumped onto the larger test track. And I was actually quite impressed. The 116 horsepower version of the Ridge runs really good, actually. It's quite spirited. They had a big back straight on that track, and we were able to get 62 mile an hour out of the machine going down that back straight, and it was still pulling. If we would have had a little more room, it would have continued to pull, and as far as I know, it's governed at the same speed as the KRX, which is 68 mile an hour. Need to verify that, but it was actually quite impressive. I'm sure Kawasaki wouldn't be all that pleased with us going that fast into the first corner because it was an abrupt right kind of 90-degree corner, but the machine took it really well. We pitched it in there and it slid the back end and we drove through it. So it was actually really fun. I rather had a good time driving the XR. I will say that model feels more spirited, more kind of sporty, maybe between like a Commander and a Defender, leaning more to the Defender side. But more performance than like a current model Defender Limited. So I was pleased with that. And I do think out here in the West, the XR is going to be a better seller. We've had a lot of people go, why did Kawasaki opt to build the Ridge like they did and make it like the Ranger or the Defender? And you've got to remember, like, we're very lucky out here in Utah to have a lot of room, and we have open desert, and we can, do higher speed trails. But in a global market, the #1 selling product in side-by-sides are utility, that being your mules, your Defenders, your Rangers. So Ridge fits really nicely in that space. And I am really excited that a Japanese manufacturer is finally stepping up and doing something, offering an HVAC model. They teased that new 2025 KRX that's supercharged. So it's really nice to see a Japanese manufacturer stepping into the ring with Kawasaki, or with BRP and Polaris. And I've got to give my hat off to Kawasaki. It's really easy to be negative and, very, hopeful that they're going to produce something that really fits your needs. And I get that. I was hoping that the Ridge was going to be more like maybe an Expedition, but it is a really good machine. And I think it's going to sell well for Kawasaki in a global market. The other thing about the Ridge that's kind of cool, and again, this is not a big thing for Utah, but they did make the machine 64 inches wide. Now, the reason Kawasaki opted to make the machine 64 inches wide, and true 64-inch wide, is because there are several states in the United States that require 64-inch width to be on public trail systems. So Kawasaki is going to be able to pick up business in those systems, and the Ridge will be legal to go there. That was a wise move, in my view, by Kawasaki to pick up market share and volume in those states. Utah, we're just super fortunate. We have a lot of public land. We have a lot of great places to ride, good trail systems, a lot of open room, open desert. And so it's not as big of a deal for us. But from a manufacturing standpoint, it did make sense for Kawasaki to do that. And I do hope that Kawasaki sees that there is a lot of demand in the West for more of a performance HVAC machine. But I think it's so good that we're finally getting some movement from these guys. So hopefully, we can see that, be supportive, and tell Kawasaki what our wishes are going forward, and they cross-utilize that new Inline 4. Now, speaking on the Inline 4, this is the big thing with the Ridge, is this 999cc four-cylinder motor. Now, I think it is loosely or very closely modeled off their Kawasaki jet ski motor, the 1600. It sounds like it, it feels like it, it's very smooth, the firing order is very similar, so it's going to be a great motor in my view. It was very, very good in the Ridge, and I think they're going to start cross-platforming that motor just like they have the KRX engine. This parallel twin has now made its way over into the Mule Pro lineup, where they dropped the triple that they had prior, that they were outsourcing, and now it's all in-house Kawasaki engines, whether it be in the KRX or in the Mule Pro, and the new 999 Inline 4 is a Kawasaki-built motor. So that motor will likely make its way into other platforms. The Ridge overall is really tight. It's very much what we expect from Kawasaki. It's very quiet. The in-cab noise is very quiet. The machine feels very tight. There's no squeaks. There's no rattles. And the performance was surprising. Now, is it going to run like a KRX? No, that's definitely not the space that the Ridge sits in. But it is a little more sporty than some of the other HVAC offerings. So I do think that they will have some success with trail ridership, and I do think it is going to be a great option with great reliability for those that want to use it for work. Obviously, I'm more excited about the higher horsepower version, and I do think that's going to be our best seller out here in the West. And I do think when Kawasaki comes with a four-seater, which they have committed to, they are going to build the Ridge in a four-seater. We've gotten that question a lot. Everyone's asking when. I don't know. It sounds like it's going to be about a year for the Ridge to debut in a four-seater. When I was speaking to Kawasaki's engineers, they're ramping up their HVAC line very gradually. Kawasaki wants to make sure their quality is really good. This is their first HVAC vehicle, and they want to make sure that they do it right, and they don't produce them too quickly and have a bunch of issues, because that's just not Kawasaki. They want to make sure that the products they produce are top-notch, they're ultra-reliable. So the ramp rate of the Ridge is going to be a little bit slower, and that means product availability for this first year is probably going to be pretty limited. We're not likely to see a lot of these through this model year cycle, but they will continue to ramp up that line, and more of them will get to market with a four-seater to follow. But overall, I want to give my hat off to Kawasaki for stepping out of the box and doing something, new as far as for them. I realize, this is not new and groundbreaking in a lot of ways, but new for the Japanese, right? Honda does not have an HVAC product. Yamaha, they don't have an HVAC product. So Kawasaki, thank you for doing that. Thank you for building, something new for that space, doing it a little bit differently with that new Inline 4 motor. They easily could have taken the KRX motor. They really could have. They could have taken this motor and put it in the Ridge, and it would have been great. But they opted to build a four-cylinder to, in my view, set it apart, increase the reliability, and I think that motor is going to cross-platform really well. So looking forward to getting those Ridges into the dealership. We're expecting our first one in March. I believe it will be a limited, so the gold machine, hopefully sometime mid to late March to get it here, and then the XR models will follow in the summer. Don't have an exact timeline, didn't have an MSRP for those yet. I still think Kawasaki's trying to figure out exactly where they're at, where their production schedule is at, how much they can build, how quickly they can build them, and with what quality. But I think it's going to be a good addition to the segment. Really looking forward to the machine that they teased, that supercharged KRX, which is supposed to be coming in 2025. So I think there's good things on the horizon from Kawasaki and the Green brand. They've got a lot of good people working there, and I think they have a good direction. So looking forward to seeing what they come up with, and we'll keep supporting them and hopefully see the Ridge here pretty soon. Thanks.